I had lived in my neighborhood for nearly 5 years without any real trouble. Sure, the HOA had their usual nitpicky rules, like only certain shades of beige for exterior paint and no excessive decorations during the holidays, but I had always managed to stay under their radar. That all changed one Friday afternoon when I arrived home to find an empty space where my car should have been. At first, I thought it had been stolen. My heart pounded as I frantically checked my surroundings, scanning for any broken glass or signs of forced entry. Nothing. My car was simply gone. I rushed inside and checked my security camera footage. My stomach dropped as I saw exactly what had happened. The HOA had towed my car. Confusion quickly turned into anger. I had parked in my own designated spot, the same place I had parked for years. There were no warning signs, no violations, nothing that justified towing. I dug through my mailbox, hoping for a notice explaining why this had happened. Instead, I found a bright orange slip shoved into my doorframe. Vehicle in violation of HOA policy. Towed at owner's expense. That was it. No further explanation, no mention of what rule I had supposedly broken. Just a smug little note telling me that my own car had been taken without warning. I immediately called the HOA office. The woman on the phone sounded completely uninterested as she told me that vehicles left unattended for more than 24 hours may be considered abandoned and subject to removal. That's ridiculous. I park there every night. My car wasn't abandoned. I snapped. Sir, you'll need to take this up with the towing company. HOA policy states. I don't care what the policy states. You had no right to tow my car without notice. But she just repeated the same scripted response before hanging up. I clenched my fists, fuming. They thought they could just get away with this. Fine. If they wanted to play games, I'd show them just how badly they had messed with the wrong homeowner. I wasted no time and immediately called the towing company listed on the notice. The moment they answered, I could tell this wasn't going to be easy. Yeah, we got your car, the gruff-sounding man on the other end said. That'll be $450 to release it. I nearly dropped my phone. $450? For what? I was parked in my own spot. The man chuckled. Not my problem. HOA said tow it, so we towed it. You want your car back? You pay. My blood boiled. I need a copy of the request from the HOA. I'll be reporting this. Sure. We got the paperwork right here. But that doesn't change the fact that your car is in my lot, and the longer it sits, the more you owe. $50 extra per day. This was a scam. The HOA and this tow company were clearly working together to extort homeowners for cash. I had heard rumors about this happening to others in my neighborhood, but now that it was happening to me, I realized how blatant and corrupt the whole operation was. I wasn't about to let them win. I drove to the impound lot, determined to get my car back. When I arrived, the place was a wreck, chain-link fences topped with barbed wire, dented cars crammed together, and a tiny office with no refunds taped to the window. The man behind the counter barely glanced up as I handed over my credit card, his smirk telling me he knew exactly how unfair this was. After I paid the ransom, because let's be honest, that's what it was, I walked out to my car. That's when I saw it. A huge scratch ran across the entire passenger side. I spun on my heel and marched back inside. Hey! My car was damaged while in your lot. The man didn't even blink. Not our problem. You signed the release. I was so furious I could barely speak. They had stolen my car, overcharged me, and now damaged it. This wasn't just an HOA issue anymore. This was personal. And I was going to make them regret every single second of it. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The scratch on my car was a constant reminder that the HOA and the towing company had just robbed me in broad daylight. But I wasn't the kind of person to just take a hit and move on. I needed a plan. That night, I started researching the tow company and the HOA board members. Within an hour, I discovered that the towing company was owned by the HOA president's brother-in-law. No wonder they had been targeting homeowners like me. It was an inside job, a scheme to keep money circulating in a little corrupt circle. The more I dug, the angrier I got. There were dozens of complaints about this same towing company, cars towed for no reason, excessive fees, even allegations of damage to vehicles. But nothing ever changed because the HOA protected them. I wasn't going to waste time filing a complaint that would get buried. I was going to hit them where it hurt. Then, I had a brilliant idea. There was an old parking lot right next to our neighborhood entrance. It had been sitting empty for a while after the last business shut down. I remembered seeing a for sale sign there recently. A crazy thought hit me. What if I bought the lot and turned it into a private parking area? It was bold. It was expensive. But it was also the perfect revenge. If I owned the only public parking lot near our HOA, I could control the parking situation. I could charge HOA members extra to park there, enforce my own rules, and deny access to the very people who had targeted me. I called the real estate agent first thing in the morning. "Hello, I'm interested in the old lot near Maplewood HOA. Is it still for sale?" "Yes, it is." "Actually, we've been struggling to find a buyer," the agent said. "The location is great, but it needs some work. Are you thinking about a business?" "Something like that," I said, trying not to sound too excited. "How much are they asking?" $50,000 for the lot. I nearly laughed. That was nothing compared to the HOA's budget. If I played my cards right, I could easily make that money back. "I'll take it," I said. 2 weeks later, the paperwork was finalized. I was now the proud owner of the only parking lot near our neighborhood. And it was time to make the HOA pay. The moment the parking lot became mine, I wasted no time in putting my plan into action. The HOA had been using its towing scam to exploit homeowners, but now, I had leverage, and I intended to use it. First, I hired a contractor to clean up the lot and install a security gate. I wanted it to look professional, something that screamed premium parking only. I also put up a large, bold sign that read, "Private parking lot. Owned by Maplewood Parking Solutions. Monthly membership required." Just below that, I listed the pricing. General public, $10 per hour. HOA residents without a permit, $250 per month. Non-HOA residents, $50 per month. Towing company, banned from entry. I knew the HOA board members would lose their minds when they saw it. After all, this lot had been used as free overflow parking for years, especially when the HOA had events or meetings. But now, they were about to pay, literally. The HOA's first reaction. A few days after I installed the signs, it happened. I was sitting in my car, sipping coffee, watching the lot from a distance when HOA President Rick pulled in. He parked his fancy BMW, stepped out, and stared at the sign in disbelief. Within seconds, he was on his phone, probably calling one of his corrupt board members. He paced around, waving his arms, his face turning red. Then, he stomped over to the gate and tried to push it open, only to find it locked. He was locked out of his own scam. The HOA tries to fight back. The next morning, I got an official letter from the HOA. It was a cease and desist notice, claiming that my parking lot was in violation of HOA guidelines. They demanded that I remove the gate, the signs, and allow free and fair access to the lot for all residents. I laughed. They had zero authority over my land. The parking lot wasn't even inside the HOA boundaries. Their rules didn't apply to me, and they knew it. I drafted a response letter, keeping it short and brutal. Dear HOA Board, thank you for your concern regarding my newly acquired private property. Unfortunately, your HOA rules do not apply to my lot. Should any HOA members wish to park here, they are welcome to apply for a paid permit. Otherwise, any unauthorized vehicles will be towed at the owner's expense. Best regards. Owner, Maplewood Parking Solutions. The HOA's parking nightmare begins. Over the next 2 weeks, my plan unfolded perfectly. Residents who used to park for free suddenly found their cars towed or locked out unless they paid the new fees. The HOA office, which had been using the lot for board meetings, now had no free spaces. The HOA president and board members had to pay out of pocket to park in the very lot they once exploited. I installed security cameras and hired a parking attendant to enforce the rules. The HOA was furious. But there was nothing they could do. Because now, I was the one running the parking show. As the weeks passed, my new parking lot rules started to take a toll on the HOA. What was once their free overflow lot had now become a high-priced inconvenience. The board members, their guests, and even their towing company had nowhere to park without paying me. At first, they tried to ignore it, hoping I'd back down. But as more homeowners complained about the lack of parking, the pressure on the HOA intensified. One evening, I arrived home to find an official-looking letter taped to my front door. Notice of violation. Dear homeowner, you are in violation of HOA Regulation 17B, which prohibits the operation of a private business within the community without HOA approval. Failure to cease operations immediately will result in daily fines of $500 and potential legal action. Sincerely, HOA Board of Directors. I smirked. This was their first mistake. First, my lot was not within the HOA's jurisdiction. Their rules didn't apply to me, and they knew it. Second, this fake fine threat was completely illegal. They had no authority over my private property. So, I took a photo of the letter and emailed it to my lawyer. His response? This is a joke. They're bluffing. I'll draft a cease and desist letter and threaten legal action for harassment. I let out a laugh. The HOA was grasping at straws. They thought they could scare me into submission. But they were in for a rude awakening. The next morning, I was reviewing security footage from my lot when I noticed something suspicious. A tow truck had entered the lot at 3 a.m. I fast-forwarded the footage and saw 2 men step out of the truck, looking around nervously. Then, they pulled out bolt cutters and attempted to break my parking gates lock. They were trying to tow cars from my lot. I immediately called the police. By the time I arrived at the lot, the cops were already there. The tow truck driver and his accomplice were being questioned by an officer, and my security camera footage was being reviewed. I walked up, arms crossed. Who called you to tow these cars? I asked. The driver hesitated. HOA told us the lot was still theirs. I turned to the officer. This parking lot belongs to me, I said, handing over the ownership papers. The HOA has no legal claim to it. These guys just trespassed and tried to commit theft. The officer nodded. The tow truck driver and his partner were promptly arrested for trespassing and attempted vehicle theft. Their tow truck was impounded. The HOA begs for a meeting. That same afternoon, I got a call from Rick, the HOA president. Look, he sighed, I think we got off on the wrong foot. I nearly laughed out loud. This man, who had stolen hundreds of dollars from me in bogus towing fines, was now trying to make peace, only because I had turned the tables on him. I don't think we got off on the wrong foot, Rick, I said. I think you just don't like the fact that I'm making you play by the same unfair rules you imposed on everyone else. There was a pause. Let's work something out, he said. Maybe we can negotiate. Maybe we can. I cut him off. Rick, I don't think you understand. I don't need to negotiate with you. The lot is mine. I set the rules. You want your board members and guests to park here? They can pay the premium fees. Just like the rest of the community had to pay your towing fines. Silence. Then, a quiet, frustrated sigh. We'll be in touch. He hung up. I knew exactly what that meant. The HOA was running out of moves. The HOA had finally realized they couldn't outplay me. My parking lot business was thriving, their illegal tactics had failed, and now, they had no control over me. but I knew they weren't done yet. When Rick said, "We'll be in touch," I had a feeling they were planning something big. And I was right. A week after our last phone call, I received a certified letter in the mail. HOA Notice of Eminent Domain. Dear property owner, it has come to our attention that your parking lot is essential to the function of our community. As such, the HOA board has voted to reclaim the property under eminent domain for community use. You will be required to cease all business operations and vacate the property within 30 days. Sincerely, HOA Board of Directors. I burst out laughing. This was beyond ridiculous. For one, the HOA had no authority to claim eminent domain. That was a power reserved for government agencies, not a neighborhood association. Second, I had already registered my parking lot as a private business. If they wanted to take it from me, they'd have to buy it at market value, which they couldn't afford. But I wasn't going to just ignore this. I wanted to make sure the HOA knew, once and for all, that I was untouchable. I forwarded the letter to my lawyer, who wasted no time drafting a formal response. 2 days later, a legal notice was delivered to every HOA board member. Dear HOA Board, your recent attempt to falsely claim eminent domain over private property is illegal and constitutes harassment. If you do not immediately cease all further actions against my client, we will be filing a lawsuit for damages, harassment, and fraud. Additionally, we will be reporting your actions to the State Homeowners Association Oversight Committee for violations of ethical conduct. You have 48 hours to issue a formal written apology and agree, in writing, to never attempt to interfere with my client's property again. Sincerely, my lawyer's name. The moment they received the legal notice, the HOA board went into panic mode. Within 24 hours, Rick called me again. "Look, I don't want this to escalate," he started. "Can we just apologize? Admit that you were trying to commit fraud?" "Yeah, Rick, you can absolutely do that." He sighed. "Fine. We'll send the letter." And they did. The next morning, a formal HOA apology letter was delivered to my mailbox. They admitted their wrongdoing, agreed to never interfere with my business, and even offered to pay for my lawyer fees. But the real cherry on top? After months of residents complaining about the HOA's shady actions, the community finally had enough. At the next HOA election, the entire board was voted out. Rick? Gone. The corrupt board members? Gone. Their ridiculous rules and unfair towing practices? Over. And as for me? I kept my parking lot. And I dropped the prices for every resident, except the former HOA board members, who still had to pay premium rates. They wanted to play dirty? I just played smarter. The HOA was defeated, my business thrived, and justice was served. As I stood in my parking lot, watching the former HOA members struggling to find parking, I couldn't help but smile. They had abused their power for years. And now? They were at my mercy. And the best part? Every single time they paid me to park, they were funding the very thing they tried to destroy. Karma really is a beautiful thing.